Welcome back. CeCe Winans has led millions of people into the presence of God through her music. However, she couldn't reach her own son with the gospel. Despite growing up in the first family of gospel music, he wanted nothing to do with God, so much so that he moved to the other side of the world to escape his godly heritage. But like the old saying goes, you can't outrun God. Here's his story.
Grew up with two strong Christians as parents. I grew up in church, so I was familiar with church and hearing about God. And it wasn't until, I don't know, high school where I got a little bit of independence. I realized that my faith began to be kind of get in the back seat of my life and other things took precedent. And that's when I would say that my relationship with God was pretty non-existent. It's never good to live two lives, you know? And I think I had gotten to the point where, given that my personal life wasn't really matching, there became a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, a lot of conflict with family, culture, kind of what I know in my head versus what's actually happening in my heart. I thought maybe I should leave the city. Maybe I should find another place to live for a few months.
Growing up as the son of award-winning gospel singer CeCe Winans, Alvin felt the hard tug to get away from his widespread celebrity family, the church, and God. But he struggled to find a place just to completely start over.
So Australia, it was English speaking, it was far, and we didn't know anybody. So that's how I ended up picking Melbourne. And we were there years prior, and I had there was a driver that we had that I kept in contact with. He was around my age, and I reached out to him, and he happened to have an extra room in his house with his roommates. So he said that I could come there and take a room, so that's what I did. I was so lost / open that I actually told myself, whatever group of friends, crew or crowd I click with first, I'm just gonna like dive into that community. So when my friend invited me to church, I was kind of been there, done that, because I grew up around it, but another voice said, you don't know anybody in this whole country, at least just go and start meeting people. Walked in, pretty young group, low-key, and then the song started, worship started, and it was just fire, like hands up, there were tears. I grew up hearing stories like, you know, I knew God was moving, and I just never talked like that. I don't really think like that. I know God is real, but I'm just not that guy that's like, that's the Lord. But that moment was like, okay, I get it. God is real, and he definitely set me up. So sure enough, I just started going with the flow, met the pastors. They said, you need to come to DMS. I said, what's DMS? They said, he's coming to DMS. It starts in an hour and a half. We'll see you in an hour and a half. Go get some lunch. DMS was a discipleship school that their church offered. It was a 9-month class. I'm like, I'm not going to that. But then my friend, Wally, that I rode with, he was one of the volunteers for this class. So I didn't have a ride home. So I had to sit in the back and just hear the premise of this class. It was like the orientation day. And whatever, I can't remember what they shared for that orientation, but whatever they said, I just knew. I remember knowing 100% that I was supposed to be a part of whatever this was. So I called my family that day and said, I don't know who these people are, but God is, I definitely know that God is he's active right now. Like I think he's giving me an opportunity here and I need to take it.
During Alvin's time in Melbourne, God began to transform and encounter him in ways he never experienced before. And God began a work in Alvin that would turn his life around for the better.
I was hearing truth that was just wrecking my world in the best way. And being like, oh, I gotta get home. I want people to know about this, because they weren't reading different scriptures than we read in Nashville. It was the same Bible, but there was something about just the zeal and the confidence that they imparted into the people that they were preaching to, and they just made it click. I finished the course. I graduated from DMS. And I don't know, I felt free for the first time. I felt hope for the first time in a while. Had a lot of vision.
After Australia, Alvin went back to life in Nashville with this incredible zeal from his God-ordained experience and decided to follow his passion to pursue music as a singer, songwriter, and producer, winning 2 Grammy Awards. At the same time, he continued shedding light to others about Jesus, but God had even bigger plans to fulfill his purpose and promise that he once spoke to his parents through prophetic words years prior.
1995, we had a guest preacher at our church in Nashville, Born Again Church, and they said that my parents were going to pastor one day. They said, you guys are going to be pastors of a church. And they're like, no, like they were not excited to hear that because that's just not what they envisioned for their lives. Clockwork, almost like once a year at least, someone would say it. My dad was like, am I missing something here? In his prayer time, his prayer to God would be, am I missing something? Because we do not want to do this if this is not what you want us to do. But if this is what you want us to do, we'll do it. But you've got to make it so clear to us that you want us to pastor a church that a blind man could see it. Fast forward to 2011, and I'm doing my thing with sharing the gospel with my friends, you know. I got people coming over my house. Diane and Brahm are hearing about this revival that's happening in our friend circle, me and my roommate Trey. And they're like, what would you say if we came to Nashville and did like a week-long version, a 7-day version of DMS, the class that you did in Australia? And it wasn't until they asked that I remember while I was in Australia, I used to say, I just wish that this could get to Nashville somehow. Not knowing that 2 years later, it would literally come. Like Diane and Brahm, the leaders of this class, somehow made like this intensive version. So I asked my parents if we could have it at their house. Their house was big enough. And all I can say is the same thing that happened to me over the 9-month period happened to this whole group. Like, they left that week sharing with everybody that God is real. I had no idea he was that real. And then in March 2012, we invited my pastors. This time they brought a few more people with them. We did it again at my parents' house. This time 80 people came. So I say that because remember my dad's prayer was, if you want me to pastor a church, you've got to make it so obvious that a blind man could see it. That was my dad's prayer. And he said when he saw 80 people in his living room worshiping God, he said he felt the Lord say, how much more obvious do you want me to make it? And that was the start of Nashville life. I became lead pastor January 2021. If you read scriptures, there's so many people from Moses to Abraham that's like, not me. We tend to see our shortcomings in a way that can make it difficult to walk in the purpose that God has for each of you, which is always beyond what you think you can do. He always calls us to deeper waters than we think that we can actually swim in. No joy, no satisfaction has ever matched what I've had since I've been making disciples and working in ministry.
Awesome story of God's faithfulness. I remember CeCe sharing Alvin's testimony during one of our conversations. Now, as parents, we want badly for our children to have a relationship with God. So when they go in the opposite direction, it hurts. But let Alvin's story be a reminder that we can trust God with our children.